Okay, so let's move forward with our two covers. This is the last one we messed with, and it just needs the signature sewn inside and then the decorative paper put on. So I think we'll just finish up with this one and then finish up with this other one. So let's just keep going with this one. So this one has 5 signatures, and this is pretty straightforward, pretty cut and dried when you're just sewing directly into the spine. Nothing fancy has to be done there. So what I want to do is I need to mark where my holes are going to go. And really, I don't want to put marks on the inside of my spine here because I don't want to take the chance of any of it showing. And I don't really want to put marks on the outside either. So what I am going to do is cut a piece of cardstock that matches the size of my spine. And then I can use that as a guide or a template. This is a piece of, I believe this is probably 80-pound cardstock. So I'm just going to mark it the same size as my spine. Height and width. Okay, and let me cut this off camera real quick. There we go. Okay, so I have 5 signatures, so that means I have one that's going to be exactly in the middle and then 2 on each side. So that's easy enough to do. We can find the exact middle first. And my spine is 2.5 inches exactly. So we're going to go 1 1/4. Let's go up to the top. One and a quarter. I'm just going to go ahead and draw that line. Okay. And then now I want to kind of take a look at these when I spread them out. I'm going to let them spread out naturally. And let's see, let me see if I can bring you down to see what I'm seeing. Lift this up just a tad. There we go. Kind of let those signatures spread out a little bit naturally and get a good idea of where they're at. Okay, and what I'm going to do first, I'm kind of eyeballing them first, just see kind of where they're at, how they want to lay. I don't want them to be too close together because I want them to have some room to expand. And I'm just going to make some little tick marks where those line up. Okay, just for, let me zoom in, just to help me. Okay, so I just put some tick marks where they roughly line up. Now I'm going to measure them and see what we have. That one is about about 3/8. That little mark. And that was 3/8 over from the center. 1, 2, 3. That was 4/8. Let's try 3/8. That seems to be my go-to. Most of the time I have about 3/8 of an inch between my signatures. So 1, 2, 3/8 puts me here. 1, 2, 3/8 puts me here on this. Got a little wonky with my measurement. And that leaves me 4/8 between there and the cover. Let's look at this side. 1, 2, 3/8. 1, 2, 3/8. Okay, so let me erase my original little tick marks. And now I'm just going to place my signatures on the marks I just made, the ones I actually measured out, and see how that looks and if I like it. And I don't know, I feel like it's not quite enough. I'm going to go a 1/2 inch. Let's see what happens then. See, and once you get comfortable doing this all the time, you'll get your own routine. And for me, every journal seems to be a little bit different. The spaces I put between my signatures, it's based on how much stuff I'm sticking in there and kind of the look I'm going for. So let's try 1/2. That's normally quite a bit bigger than I would do. But those signatures, when I hold them up, they just kind of want to do that. So I'm going to let them. Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do for these. I'm going to go 1/2 on these. They like that 1/2 inch spacing. Kind of letting them just move themselves into place naturally, you know. I know this sounds kind of weird, but rather than me forcing these signatures into doing something, I'm just kind of seeing where they fall naturally. I know, that sounds weird. Kind of zen. Sounds kind of zen. Alright, and I'm just going to go ahead and connect all my dots now. So 1/2 inch from the center, top and bottom, and then a 1/2 inch over from there, top to bottom. And I did the same thing over here, 1/2 inch from the center. It's important to make sure, especially when you're using exposed stitching, you're stitching directly through the spine and it's going to show. It's super important that you get everything lined up nice and straight. You don't want you don't want wonky stitches on the back side. You don't want everything wiggly and yeah. Nice and straight. Okay, and then you have to decide, am I going to do 3 holes or 5 holes, or how many holes am I going to do when I sew it in? Now, these were only about, what, 6 3/4 inches tall. So I think we can get away with 3 holes for this, no taller than what this is. I think 3 holes will do just fine. So what I like to do, again, is finding the center. So turn it this way. And I'm going to go over here. Put it on my line, measure what I have. I have 7 1/8, okay, for my height. Appears to be 7 1/8. Now, I know that's taller than this, okay? I'm not worried about the signature yet. I'll show you how to mark those in just a minute. Right now, we're making our holes on our spine. Okay, so my spine is 7 1/8 inch tall. I want to go 1/2. I want to find the halfway mark. So 1/2 of 7 is 3 1/2. And then I have 7 1/8. 1/2 of 1/8 is a 16th. So I'm going to go 3 1/2 plus a 16th, which is 3 9/16. Lots of math. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing down here on this line. If you've got one of those fancy rulers that have a 0 in the middle and you can go out, you can find your center a lot easier. I have one. I math pretty good, so I don't need it. I'm just being silly. But I do like fractions. Okay, and then you need to decide where your other 2 holes are going to be if you're doing a 3 hole. And I usually like to, so let's bring this in, bring in our signature, put it roughly where it would be centered. And then keep in mind that you don't, where you marked this hole at, you need to keep in mind where your signature is going to be placed. So I want my hole in my signature to be close to here. So that would be about, let's let's just go 2.5. Okay, and then I need to go 2.5 on this side. 1, 2.5. And then I need to go back to this last line here, and we're going to go from the center 1, 2.5. From the center 1, 2.5. And you should be able to just connect the dots. And now all your holes should be 2.5 from your center. Yep, 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 yep. Okay. Now, everywhere the line's crisscrossed, that's where you're going to be punching a hole. So I like to go ahead and circle them, that way I don't lose them. So I have 5 signatures, and I'm doing a 3-hole stitch. So we're going to be making 15 holes in our lovely cover. Okay? All right. Now, some people, it depends on your preference, like to punch the holes from the inside out. I like to do them from the outside in, and that's because when you punch a hole, you're essentially blowing out the other side, right? So you're going to have one side is going to be nice and flat and almost concave, and then the other part is going to be where you've blown the hole out, and it's going to be a little bit bumpy on that side. And I would rather that be on the inside than on the outside. So I'm keeping my template right here on the outside cover, and I'm going to poke through into the inside. So this is just a little sanding block. It's just a foam block that's like sandpaper. I use it for all kinds of things, but it works great for doing holes like this. I'm just poking through all of my holes. Okay. Just keep going till you get all of your holes punched. Okay, now you can take your template off, and there's all of your holes. And let me turn this over and see here on the inside, you can see some of them they're bumpy or raised. And so I would rather that be on the inside where it doesn't really show. Some of these may have to poke through a little bit farther just to make sure I can see them really well. And I don't want my holes to be too terribly big. This poker thing, and some of them get a little bit bigger the deeper you go. I don't want to make humongous holes. Okay, that's a little bit better. All right, set that off to the side. Now I need to make a punching guide for my signatures so that my holes along the edges of my signatures line up with the holes on that I made on my spine. So what we're going to do now is we're going to make another template. Let's see. And this, I don't really need 80-pound cardstock for this. Let's see if I've got something else a little bit. Oh well, cardstock's cardstock, right? I'm marking the height of my signatures. Here, I just need one of them. I want my template to be the height of my signature, not the height of my cover. Okay, so I'm going to run that through my paper trimmer. And I only need, you're just going to have a little folded section. Okay, be right back. Let me cut this off camera. Okay, see, so I just cut enough that I can make a fold, and now I need to cut it for the height. Okay, so it's the same height as my journal signature. I've got a little fold here. And now what I want to do is I need to find the center of this, because I need the center of this to line up with the center of this, and they're not the same height, okay? I could eyeball it, but I'm kind of a perfectionist, so I will be measuring to find where the center is. Okay, so this is 6 3/4. I need to find half of that, so that 6 3/4, forgive me for doing my math out loud, 6 3/4 is the same as 6 6/8, and half of that then would be 3 3/8. So 3 and 1, 2, 3/8. That's my center, 3 3/8. Bring it over here, and I can measure these out again if I want to, or I can lay it down and make it match. Bottom hole, top hole. And what I'm going to do is I need to make sure that this didn't matter whether or not it was, let's see, it's 1 1/16, 1 1/16. Okay, so it's perfect on the end, so it doesn't matter whether or not this was top and this was bottom, or this was bottom and this was top. Sometimes if you're not real careful when you're measuring and this distance is different on each side, then you need to make sure which one was top and bottom. Okay, so now we've made our little punching template with our 3 holes. Okay, and I'm going to fold it in. And what will happen now is when we take this to punch the holes for our signatures, we'll be placing that inside the center of our signature and punching our holes. So I'm going to get my little cradle, book cradle, there we go, my book cradle my hubby made me, and I'll be right back. Well, actually, before I punch holes, what you would want to do is you want to make sure you look through your signature and everything is placed where you want it to be. Like all your papers are slid up or down, however you wanted them to be. Yeah. So that's just what you'd want to do for all your signatures. This is my little book cradle my husband made for me. Just some scrap wood that he built together, and then he left this open right here so my punchy tool can punch straight on through. Make sure everything's lined up. And put my punching guide in here. Okay, and I'm going to use my punching tool, or your awl, or whatever you have. Punch straight on through. Okay, now you can either go ahead and just sew this in now, or you can clip them and do all your sewing at one time, which is what I usually do. So I'm going to go through and go ahead and punch all the rest of my signatures. Okay, now this signature I had planned on putting an envelope in the center and having it be bound into my, actually into my signature. So I left the envelope open and I didn't glue it. That way I could actually punch through holes through the envelope and make it bound into my journal. And then I'll glue it closed once we're done. So just I want to make sure I get 2 holes through the envelope, not just 1 hole. Okay. I think maybe I better slide that down just a hair. Okay, that will give me 2 holes through my envelope, and I will just sew it in like I'm sewing in another piece of paper of my signature, and then I'll glue the envelope closed later. Okay, so that's a good way to be able to include envelopes that are like actually bound into your journals. Okay, I'm going to finish these up. Okay, so all our holes are punched. We're ready to sew them into our cover. Lately I've been using craft lace. It's a waxed thread. I get it in the leather working department. It's just a waxed thread used for leather working, but I think it works great for doing, it doesn't really say what it is, just waxed thread. It works great for doing bookbinding. Okay, so what I usually like to do, I like to have plenty of extra. So I usually do 3 times my signature, 1, 2, 3. And if I'm using a really thin thread, like maybe upholstery thread or something like that, I double it up. So I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll do 6 times the length of my spine, and when I sew it in, I thread the needle to where I'm double threaded. Okay, but when I'm using this, I don't need to do that. This stuff's pretty heavy, and I am still going to separate this even. So I'm just going to do 3 times the length. 1, 2, 3, and maybe just a pinch more. Okay, and then I am going to work it apart. I don't need, this stuff's very thick, and I don't need it that thick. Let me look on this end. This end's a little more frayed. So I'm just going to work it to where I can get it to split in half. And it's twisted. And that half is plenty thick enough. It's still thick. It's plenty thick enough for doing a journal signature. If you wanted to go even a little bit thinner, so you can split it into 4 pieces even, which I have done. And I may do, since I'm doing exposed thread on my signatures, I really don't want a huge thread back there, so I might split it into 4. Okay. There, I've got 4 threads, so I'll just have to do that one more time with another length to give me my 5th thread that I need. And you know, I wasn't planning to do this one as a beaded spine, beaded threads. I wasn't planning on it, but now's the perfect time to show you how I do that. So I'm going to go in the house, grab my beads, come back out, and I'm going to show you how to do that too. Okay, so I have never beaded on camera before. So this may be a little tricky, I don't know. So I've got some beads laid out that I think I want to use. I did a little sample test run of what I want. Let me zoom you down just a little bit. Okay, so this cover has some green and the pink roses in it. So I went with, hopefully that's in focus. I don't think it is. Come on now. Oh, there it is, there it is, there it is. I'm still getting used to this camera. So I pulled out some green and then some pinks and some whites, and I've gone ahead and did a little test, and that should fit between my holes perfectly. So I'm going to leave this out. That's my little sample of how I'm going to bead. And I'm only going to bead one of these on camera. The rest of them I will either speed up the video or do off camera. I just want to show you how I do it. Now, needle preference, you just need something that has an eye that's big enough to hold the thread that you're using. Some of my beads will go through this needle, some of them won't. So when that's the case, I take it off and I bead them without the needle. Okay, got my signature, and I am going to, oh, I know, missing one important step. My step I always do. One less thing to have to worry about. I tie a paper clip on the very end of my thread. I tie it just with one knot. And I leave a tail about 3-4 inches long. Okay, so just tie that on there. And that is so that no matter what, I don't pull my thread all the way through my signature and have to start over again, because that is so annoying to do. So I'm going to start on the inside of my first signature right through the center hole. And no matter what, see, I can tug and tug and tug, and I'm not going to accidentally pull my thread all the way through. Just a simple little paper clip. Or whatever. Okay, so I am going to go through this hole here from the inside out. I'm going to poke that hole just a little bit better so I can see it better. There we go. Okay, and it's going to go right there. Okay. On this side is where I'm going to start my beading. So looking at my little pattern, I've already decided how I want my colors to go. I'm going to put a green, and then I'm going with white, or white-ish. See, and that won't go over my needle. So that's when I just take my needle off, put one on there, and that's the benefit to using waxed thread like this. It's kind of stiff, and you can bead easily with it. Okay, and then I have these pink beads over here, and it looked like I was doing 5 of those. One, 2. Okay, I had 3 sets of pink. 1, 2, 3, and then I need one more white, and then another green. Oop, I just realized that most of that time I was probably not even on camera. Gosh, guys, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm gonna put my needle back on my thread. And if you're not beading, then, you know, just skip that step and sew it in without that. Now I'm going to go back into that top hole. Ooh, keep this around. And through the top hole of my signature and out this side. And then we're just going to pull it tight and see what we have. Okay, so I was eyeballing to see if that setup would work. And I thought it would, but I hadn't actually tried it. And as you can see, it doesn't. I have too many beads. My thread won't lay close to my spine, which means I need to take out probably about 1 or 2 beads. So what I will probably do is undo that and take 1 or 2 out of the center and then put it back. Okay, and they'll come back. And it is a trial and error process. I'm sorry, but if you're going to do a beaded spine, it does take some time, and you will have to play with it because you don't want loose loops like this. You want it to be flat to your spine. So when it does this, it means, you know, because I'm holding it tight. I'm holding it tight on the inside here. When it does that, it means you have too many beads. Okay? All right, I'm going to spare you the boringness. I'm going to take this apart and take another 1 or 2 beads out of the middle, and then I'll come back. Okay, so all I had to do was take out one out of the center. So I chose one that was a little bit bigger. These seed beads, they're usually all just kind of, I mean, they're close to being the same size, but they're not exact. So this is not an exact science. But now that I know, I can do 5 and 5 and 4 on this one, okay? All right. It gets easier. It's just the very first signature. You've got to get a process, you know, and then after that, it's just repeating the process. So it looks harder than what it really is. Okay, so now I've come out at the top. I'm going to go down to the bottom. I'm going out and out of my spine. I'm pulling tight. And I don't have to worry too much about tightness yet. I don't have to be exact. I can tighten it up at the end. And now I repeat the process with the beading. Okay, I'm going to do green, white, and then my pinks and so on. I'm going to do the exact same thing. Put my needle back on. Maybe. I have my glasses on today, guys. Better than normal. I wouldn't be able to do any of this if I didn't have my glasses. All right, and back through the center hole. Back through the center hole of our signature. Being careful not to pierce somewhere we shouldn't. So you may have to do a little wiggling and coaxing and persuading. You may have to loosen it up just a little bit too. You want to go back through the same hole. You don't want to be piercing any new holes. And sometimes it's tricky. Just keep your patience. Keep your patience. There it is. There it is. Okay, now what we want to do is, so here's our thread down here where we skipped from the top to the bottom, okay? You want to make sure that your tails, one is on each side. So one tail on, you want one tail on each side of this thread here, okay? That went from the top to bottom, one tail on this side, one tail on that side, okay? And you're going to pull this tight, being careful not to pull through any of your papers. And work that paper clip off. Using wax thread, it gets tight even if you only tie a single knot. Sometimes I just slide it off. Okay. Let's hold these tight. Holding them tight. I want to turn it around. I want to check to make sure this looks good. Everything looks nice and tight there, nice and tight to the spine. Give it a little tug and make sure. Okay, and it's good. Keep it nice and tight. We have one thread on each side and tie a knot. And tie a knot and tie a knot and tie a knot and tie a knot. However many knots you think you need to do. And if it makes you feel better, you can even put a tiny drop of glue right on your little knot just to keep it in place if you want to, especially if you're not using a waxed thread. You don't want your knot to ever work loose. If you're using a waxed thread, it's more than likely not ever going to come loose. So now I can unclip my signature, and there we go. So that's what it looks so far. Okay, now you can decide if you want every single signature to be beaded. Do you want all of them to be beaded? Or maybe you could do every other one, like this one could be plain thread, and then the middle one could be beaded, and then plain thread, and then beaded. It depends on how much bling you want back there. So that's up to you, okay? But I'm not going to do the rest of them on camera. So I'm going to set this one aside, and we'll pull in our other book cover now. So here's our other cover, the plain pink one. And you can decide if you want this to be kind of a curved spine. So we did use a double thickness of cardboard on there. It's a little bit thick, but it's still flexible. And if you do, you could have kind of rounded it before you glued it into the fabric. That can help. Or you can maybe take something round like this lotion bottle and kind of work it into the shapes that you want, which is sometimes what I do if I just want kind of a subtle roundness. So see, we've got just a subtle roundness here. And it's a little easier to get around this if you don't do quite as thick a spine, but I wanted a little bit thicker on this one. So pretty good. See, just got a slight arch, not completely flat, but a slight arch. Okay, now I've cut another piece of cardstock. This is more 80-pound cardstock. Thick cardstock works really well for this, about 80-pound cardstock, maybe even 65, but I wouldn't go below that. And I've cut it to the same width as my spine, but I have cut it just slightly shorter than my book cover. Okay, I don't want it to go all the way to the edge because we're actually going to keep this and sew into it, and it's going to get glued in. Okay, so I'm just slightly less than the height of the book. I've given myself maybe about 1/8 on the top and 1/8 on the bottom. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to glue this onto our fabric, which means we're going to have to cut a section of fabric. And our fabric, we're going to want our fabric to be the same height as our little piece of cardstock here, and we need it to be a little bit wider. I have help in the shop again today, if you can hear. One of my golden girls over there. Okay, line that up so I can get a straight edge. Okay. And kind of eyeball it. Doesn't have to be exact. Around about 2 inches on that side, then my spine, and about 2 more inches. So I'm going to cut it off over here. So I'm going to line up this edge. Get my ruler on here. Okay, this is extra. So now I have the width. And now I need the height. So I'm going to cut off the bottom to where it stays nice and straight. Okay, get pencil, and I'm just going to mark for the height. I could measure, but I'm just going to mark it on that side, mark it over here on this end. I'm going to cut it off. Now we're going to take this and we're going to glue it onto the back side. And actually, before I do that, I want to make sure that I get this straight. I don't want to glue this in wonky at all. So I said I had given myself about a 2-inch allowance, so it wasn't exact, but it's going to be now. So I'm just going to randomly pick this edge over here and go 2 inches over and mark. And then 2 inches over and mark, and I am on the back side of my fabric. And then when I glue this on now, I'll glue this up to that line. And then I know I'm getting it glued on exactly straight. And then this over here may or may not be 2 inches. It might be 2 1/8, 2 1/16. It doesn't really matter. It's just a flap to help us glue it into our spine. Ooh, my glue is getting thick. It looks like I'm putting on a lot, but there's not that much coming out. Okay. Lining that up. Okay. All right. So this will get laid in our journal like this. And our signatures will be on this side. So what we're going to do is we're going to mark where our signatures are going to go here on the back. Okay, now, let's see. I still have my little helper guide, my punch guide from the other journal. And these signatures are pretty close to being the same height. So what I'm going to do, the other one was evidently just a little bit taller. What I'm going to do is kind of center that on there. I'm going to mark the top and the bottom. Okay. And I'm just going to cut this off so it actually is the right height. Okay. And I'm going to mark this right now so it doesn't get confused. This is the top. And this one's going to be the top. Okay. So I'm going to cut that off a little bit just so it's the right height for my journal. You could totally make a new one from scratch, but why waste another piece of cardstock? I already have this. Okay, so that is the right height. And I can go ahead and still leave my same punching holes, middle, top, and bottom. However, my distance, because I eyeballed it, this distance between this hole in the edge and this hole in this edge, those might be slightly different. So I don't want to accidentally turn this different directions for different signatures. So that's why I wrote top on it. This is always going to be the top hole. Okay. And this is always going to be the top here. Okay. So we can use our guide. Mark these. That's where that hole is. That's where that hole is. All right, and turn it around and right top on this side. And I am just lining this up pull you down a little bit. Okay, and see, this second journal is easy because we've already marked it for the other one, so you would have to start from scratch if you wanted to, by finding the center and then marking out and marking, you know, just like we did for the other one. I'm just recycling what I have. Okay, I'm going to do it down here as well. Okay, set that off to the side. Make sure, yeah, we wrote top on there. Okay, so it always has to face the right way. I'm just going to connect those lines. Okay, so those are drawn. Now, for this journal, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 signatures for this one. 7. So again, because I have an odd number, I can find the center first. That's the nice thing about doing odd signatures in your journal, doing 3, 5, 7, so on, is that you can, it's easier to space out the spaces in your signatures because you always have one that's going to be in the center. Okay, now I have an odd measurement, 2 3/4. 2 3/4. And I want to find the center. So 2 3/4 is the same as 2 6/8. So half of that is going to be 1 3/8. It's going to be our center. I love fractions. Actually, math was probably my best subject in school. 1, 2, 3. There's 1 3/8. Go on down here to the bottom. Or you could cheat and use one of those rulers. 1, 2, 3 that has the center thing. Actually, it's not cheating. They're nice. I have one. Okay, so that's where the center signature is going to go. And again, everywhere it crosses, that's where you're going to have a hole. Okay, now let me back you up just a little bit. I'll do like I did the last time and sort of just set these down and see how they like to be. Let them have their freedom a little bit. That looks good right there. That looks nice. They seem to like that. Carly, don't lick your paws, baby. Okay, so I just made some marks there. Eyeballing them. Bring me back in now. So those are my little pre-marks I made. Let's see about how far they are apart. 1, 2, let's see, that one's about a little more than 3/8. This one's 1, 2, about 3/8. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. For my center mark, I'm going to go over 3/8. 1, 2, 3. Go 3/8 again. 1, 2, 3. And go 3/8 again, because I have 7 signatures. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then from the center line, now I need to go that direction. 1, 2, 3/8. 1, 2, 3/8. 1, 2, 3. Okay, now go to the top, and I'm going to do the same thing. From the center, 1, 2, 3/8. 1, 2, 3/8. 1, 2, 3/8. And from the center to the left. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And then connect my lines. Okay, and everywhere that it intersects, that's a hole for your stitching. Okay, I just like to go ahead and circle them. That way they're very obvious for me. Okay, I had 7 signatures times 3 holes, so that was 21 holes. All right, I'm gonna zoom it back up a little bit. Okay, now let's find our little block. There it is. And I want to poke all my holes. Now, this side's not going to show because it's going to be glued into our spine like that. So, I don't want to blow my holes out too terribly far on this side. Like, I don't want to make this side look bad because this side will show. This is what your signatures are going to bed up to. Okay, but painted fabric is kind of forgiving because you can kind of work the hole back in, so to speak. So if you blow it out too bad, you usually can fix that. And I'm just going to punch all my holes. Okay, so there's all my holes punched. Set this aside for the moment. Then I will bring in my book cradle and we start punching our signatures. So same as last time, you can either punch a signature and then sew it in, and then punch another and sew it in, or you can get them all punched and ready. That's what I like to do, so I don't have to pause and go back and forth and back and forth. So, oh, this is another one of those where I wanted an envelope in the center. So that'll be the one we start with. Make sure we're good top to bottom. This envelope, I'll move it around where I need to because I would like to have 2 holes straddle it. Bring in my little guide, remembering to put the top with pointing at the top. Center that up, and it looks like I need to bring my envelope down just a little bit. Okay. Make it punch, punch, punch. Okay. Now I would normally go through and punch all my signatures, but I have 7 of them, and I'm sure you don't want to watch me do 7 signatures on camera, all the same thing over and over and over again. So I'm just going to go ahead and sew this one in, and then I can do the rest of them off camera because you will know. All right, the way I have my signatures figured up, this one I just did is my back signature, my very last one. So this is going to go in. Here's the top, because I wrote top on it. So this is my last signature, so it's going to be over here on my far right hand side, okay? All right, let me set that down. I already have some, okay, hello. Am I bothering you? I already have some thread ready to go. This is that waxed thread I like to use. Oh, you know what? I don't have thread ready to, well, I'm not doubling it up, so it's good. It's good like it is. Just ignore me. Just ignore me. Okay, I'm going to go in from the back side through the center. And I'm going to go in there, from the outside in, through my center hole. Oh, and I forgot the part, the most important part. I like to put a paper clip on the back, or on the end. Leave a tail so I can tie it off. Okay, now I can either go to the top hole or the bottom. I'm going to go to the bottom, so I can go ahead and get that envelope secured. I'm going from the inside out. The bottom hole. Coming through. And now I can pull and tug, and I won't pull my thread all the way through because the paper clip's tight on there. Okay, go to the top hole. Come through. Okay. Okay, and then back through the center, being careful not to put your needle through the thread that you've already done. Don't cross thread, so to speak. You won't be able to get it pulled tight if you do. You want to go next to the thread that's already there, not through it, okay? Just going to run up right next to it, being careful not to go through it. And come out. Okay. So here's my thread that runs top to bottom, like we talked about on the other journal. I want to make sure one of my tails is on each side, or either side. And now I can pull nice and tight, nice and tight. You really, really want these to be nice and tight as you can without ripping pages, because they will loosen up over time. The more the journal is used, the more the threads stretch, okay? And you don't want to start out with them being loose at all. And a wax thread really helps with this, because once you pull them tight, they stay tight. Give a good strong knot. Good strong knot. Okay, and then you can cut the tails. So because this part is not going to be seen, it's going into the spine of our journal. There's lots of tutorials on YouTube for doing these type of spines. So just look for a YouTube video or Google hidden spine or hollow spine. Because there's tons of tutorials out there for that. Zoe Tofield. I'll try to remember to put her link below. She was very instrumental in me learning how to make hardcover journals. And I'm just putting some glue on those tails. Keeps them from ever coming undone. Not that they would, they probably wouldn't, but why not, right? So I just spread some glue down that whole length. Okay, and then you would want to go through and do all the rest of your signatures the same way you just did. Okay, so I'm going to do mine, and then I'll come back and we'll put this in our journal. Okay, so all the signatures are sewn into both journals now. So this one I finished up, and I only beaded every other one. I didn't bead the other two. I don't know. I guess the reason I was thinking that was that this is kind of more vintagey and not real bright and blingy. So I thought maybe doing all 5 would be a little bit too much. I don't know. You can let me know what you think in the comments. I can always cut the threads and re-sew those in and bead them. So at this point I could go ahead and put in papers, decorative papers on the inside, which I think I will be using these. But I'm going to do that in another video series, show you how I finish out the covers, because I'm going to do something pretty on the front too. So we'll do all of that in that video. So at this point, this one's done for this set of videos. Now for this one, I sewn all 7 into my text block, I guess is what you could call it. And then now I want to throw in a few extras. So I like the idea of journals having ribbon bookmarks to hold your place. So they extend past here and they hold your place for where you were journaling last. So I'm just going to get an eyeball measurement, give it about 4 inches or so to hang out here at the bottom. That puts me to the top of the page, and then quite a bit of extra here. And what I want to do is I'm going to glue this on the back here, but I want to be able to, it needs to move. So if I want to put the ribbon in the back signature to mark a place, it has freedom to move. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to glue it in the middle, but I'm not going to glue it all the way up. That's why I give it a lot of extra. Come on, glue. All right, I'm just going to put a big old globby glob right there. I don't want it to pull out. Big old glob. Okay, and so now my ribbon has freedom to move. Because I'm not gluing this flat to my spine, I'm going to leave this hollow. So when I glue it in, see, if I was going to glue the whole thing flat, then it would just move from where it's at up here. But I'm not going to glue the whole thing flat. I'm going to leave it hollow behind, and that allows your journals to open flat. So if I smear glue all over this whole thing and I glue it flat in here, then when I open it, say I'm near the center, when I open it, it's not going to lay very flat. Whereas if I glue it hollow, which I'm going to, it allows freedom of movement right there. And that's what allows you to be able to open a journal flat. Okay, so that's what I plan on doing. It's totally personal preference on how you do that. I'm also going to put in some little decorative elements here that are going to peek out past my signatures. I'm going to cut one for the bottom and one for the top. Zoom you down a little bit. There we go. I'm just going to put a line of glue down here at the bottom. Okay, and one up here at the top. I don't want to get my ribbon in that. Just put a little decorative trim, just for prettiness. It serves no function at all. And then if you wanted to, you could glue another decorative element here on the spine part, but I think this is plenty. Okay, so what we're going to do now, tuck this ribbon in, we're going to line up our text block with the center of our spine. Okay. Oop, I bumped it. What you're basically looking for is you want to find the center of your cover, okay, and make sure that your center signature lines up. Okay, so that way you make it nice and centered. Check it on the top, make sure Center of the journal cover, the center of the spine matches up with the center signature, and pretty much does. Need to scoot it over just a tad. Okay, and then the next thing you want to look for is that you have it shifted up and down or vertically in the right area. So you want to make sure that your pages, your signatures, have the same space up here as they do at the bottom. So it looks like I need to scoot down just a hair. Okay, and that's pretty even on both the top and the bottom. And so in this instance, all I'm going to do is glue this flap to here. I'm not going to put any glue back here. Okay, and I'm just going to use something flat, like this ruler. I'm just going to stick that down in there. Okay, make sure nothing needs adjusted. Looks pretty good. Okay, now I want to take a bone folder or something, or that ruler I just had, and just kind of work that down into the hinge. Okay, and at that point you could even let it dry before you go over here and mess with this side if you need to. But I'm not. I'm impatient. And as much glue as I put on there, I do have a little bit of wiggle room with time. It's kind of thick. This old plastic ruler works great for doing this. I can just kind of shove it down in there and pinch it to the book cover. My bone folder, and just going to kind of work that down in. And at this point, you don't really want it to be flat. You want the book to be kind of closed while you're doing this. Okay. Makes it a little more difficult doing it that way with the book closed. But you'll like the way that it lays flat if you do. So just work that in, make sure everything is nice and flat, worked down into that crease. Make sure your other side stayed okay. And at this point, we're not going to open it up. We're going to let that dry. Okay, so if you need to wrap something around it to help it stay closed, then that's what you want to do at the moment. Okay, I'm going to come back after it's dried. So this should be dry now. And let's see how it did. Okay. crack it open here. Very nice. That did very well. Okay. So then by not gluing back here, when we open it, we get a kind of a curve there, and that allows things to lay flat a little bit better. Okay, so at this point, you could put your decorative in pages in if you were ready to do that, or if you wanted to put in tie closures, you could glue some ribbon or sari silk down inside of here, like so, and then glue your in pages on if you wanted to. So those are some decisions to make, but that's all I'm going to do for now, and then I will come back and we will decorate these covers, make them nice and pretty, and I'll probably do a little bit of paint distressing on here. So anyway, I hope that was helpful for you on building covers and different kinds, and sewing in signatures. And then of course it wasn't even planned to do beaded spine, but there we have that. So hopefully that was helpful for you. I'm going to let you guys go. That's it for now. I will be back soon to decorate these covers up with you guys. In the meantime, happy crafting. Goodbye.